Hannah, this was a really fun conversation with my friend Courtney. What did you think?
Oh my God, I'm obsessed with her. And I just wanted her to stay and talk to us forever. She just has I've never heard anything like her story. And I learned so much from her. And, the thing that I love the most is she's just so open and cool. And I've never met her. Obviously, she's your friend, but she was so open to talk about the messiness and talk about like really hard times of her life. It was really refreshing.
Yeah, she's a new friend for me, but what I have loved about getting to know her is just you can ask her anything, you can say anything, and she will help you understand, or she will have a really interesting civil conversation with you about pretty much any topic. And without giving anything away, because this is a great interview, we'll let y'all listen and hear more about Courtney, but she's got so many identities, and so many of those identities, I think most people would step back and say those things are in conflict, or you can't have this identity and this identity at the same time. So I think just as a human, she kind of flips a lot of the narratives we have about people on their head. And I think that really helps people think about the world differently. And I think she touches a lot of people in her life because of that. She invites conversation.
And she's funny as shit.
Well, without further ado, without giving anything away, please enjoy our conversation with Courtney Gray.
Welcome to Are We Happy Yet? I'm Hannah Buzzo, licensed therapist.
And I'm Jane Thatcher Hahn, licensed clinical social worker.
We're two longtime friends deep in the work of helping people untangle their lives.
And let's be honest, untangling our own along the way.
We started this podcast because even as mental health goes mainstream, more and more people are feeling anxious, disconnected, and burnt out than ever before.
So what gives? We're exploring how everything from therapy and psychedelics to culture, politics, creativity, and relationships shape our well-being.
Think of this as your weekly reality check, gut punch, and group hug all rolled into one.
We're here to ask the big questions, share what we're learning, and laugh a lot while we figure it out.
This is Are We Happy Yet? Let's get into it.
Welcome back to the Are We Happy Yet podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jane Thatcher Hahn. I'm here with Hannah Buzzo, and we have a very special guest today. Welcome, Courtney Gray.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Of course, we started with 20 minutes of technical difficulties, and I was just like barely getting out of the shower. You know how it goes. So luckily, Courtney is a dear friend, and I don't have to worry about it so much, right?
No,
I don't think she gives a fuck. It didn't seem like it.
We've definitely been in more sloppy situations than this.
That's for sure. So I have the pleasure of meeting Courtney through my husband, Darren Hahn, who this is what I think happened. You can clarify. He's a stalker. He was following Courtney on the internet because she's such a badass. And then he saw her in Home Depot and was like, hey, are you Courtney Gray? And of course, Courtney was like,
I'm like, who the hell are you?
What are you doing here?
And because I didn't recognize him because like I have not a lot of followers, but I have more followers than I can name
and memorize their faces.
And they don't look at their face to be like, oh, and I'll definitely know you in public.
Yeah.
So he just walked up. He's like, are you Courtney? Why?
Which I don't remember. I don't think you punched him.
I didn't.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
It's been a while since I punched somebody.
Okay. We can get back to that because that sounds interesting. But that's how our friendship blossomed. And now we get to see Courtney and hang out with her and her awesome wife, Rachel, and her awesome dog, Whiskey Pete. And Darren was actually the one, my husband, Darren, was like, you got to have Courtney on your podcast. She's super interesting. She's got tons of identities. She has a very unique view of happiness. And I think people would really enjoy hearing from her. So that's how we got here.
That's how we're here.
Yeah, cool. Well, Courtney, lots of places that we can start. Maybe we should start with sort of what we were talking about before we hopped on, which was this concept of having a lot of different identities and that we live in a world or a culture that says like, all right, you have this identity. Now you have this whole set of beliefs that's going to go with it, right? Mm-hmm. You are a mom or you're a queer person or you're a liberal person or a woke person or a Republican or you're a gun owner or you're this or you're that. So therefore, you now hold this whole set of beliefs. Mm-hmm. And of the people I know, I'd say you pretty much smash through that very beautifully.
I don't like stereotypes much. So I was like, let's just blow it all up. My identities are, I probably identified as a welder fabricator for the longest, just because that started happening in my late teens. Did that for a number of years. I'm a trans woman, so I was socialized male for 30 years. So that certainly influences how I move through the world and the things that I know, and also how people are very confused about that. Because someone that looks like me shouldn't know how to do the things that I do.
Yeah.
From societal constructs anyway. And then, knowing that I'm a trans woman, most people wouldn't necessarily recognize me as a mom, but I did have that privilege of knowing what it is to be a mom with my own daughters. That was an amazing experience. I was a Democrat until they did what they did with. It's not that I don't support Kamala as a candidate, but that was one of the most unconstitutional things I've ever seen, of just appointing someone to be the presidential candidate. That was not okay. So now I'm an independent. But it's kind of, when it comes to those things, being a gun owner and being a competitor collides with being more on the socially liberal side of things. And so, that definitely, I hung out with all those folks because I shot a match this last weekend. We're very different politically, but after that, we're very much the same. So that's definitely one of the things that I've learned in the process of being a professional shooter, shooting around the country, seeing how people move through. I'm also a wife, and it confuses some people. I'm not necessarily a lesbian, although that's the relationship that I'm in. But I also have relationships with other people that are not lesbian relationships. So I blow them all out of the water.
I love it.
And I think that's where, Courtney, I'm just so interested to hear more of your story and about like how you just are so grounded in this, because I feel like at this day and age, and I can speak to like as recent as last week, I went to an event where they were talking about the political landscape and basically how you shouldn't talk to anyone who is not left, and that like, it's not what they said, but that's what they said. And so I left early because clearly I can't tolerate that. But what I'm wondering from you is, in a world where it feels like you're kicked out of the group or you're rejected, which goes against literally our DNA, how do you hold all these different, can I say like conflicting values and identities? Like, what's that like to be grounded in that when it goes against millions of years of programming?
I guess the best way I can answer that is, once you've been through the shit that I've been through, I don't give a shit anymore. I don't care what people have to say. There's moments that I'm like, oh, do they really like me? And then I get back to my roots and I'm like, I don't actually give a shit. Either you're a value add to my life or you're not. And my peace is the most important thing to me. And I will guard that with everything I have. So that's kind of how I go through life. I don't go through it blindly, of course. I have morals and values and all those types of things, but I don't necessarily, just because someone identifies a certain way, I don't necessarily adopt their entire value system. Politically, I like to say it doesn't matter who I vote for, I lose rights. So
yeah. Can you speak more towards that and like what that's like?
It's insanely frustrating because we are forced in this country to have, you can choose from this package or this package of issues. And for me, that happens to be either I can lose my right to defend myself and my family, or I can make sure that my rights as a trans and queer person are intact, and that, people have like social programs that help them that can't help themselves, or that they've fallen on bad times and they can't, they don't have that ability. So it's really frustrating when it comes to that. And so it also leads to some interesting voting strategies.
On your part?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always vote. I don't always vote party line, but I do a lot of research and I bug a lot of politicians, because when I did that kind of work, when I was in social justice and working in that sphere, I learned how to do that, and I'm not afraid to do it anymore. And so I've testified on behalf of trans issues. I've testified on behalf of my gun rights. I like going and especially like collecting all the dirty little things that everyone forgot about and bringing those up in a committee and being like, actually, you voted for this once, remember? So it's interesting. And that's one thing when I was involved in that, it was just really, what's the strategy? And in retrospect, it probably wasn't a very good idea. I don't recommend this for anyone, but I chose to read the comments, all the comments, when I was doing social justice. The reason to do that is if I know what everyone's argument is, I know how to counter it. So it was very difficult to win an argument with me when it came to anything trans, because I just armed myself with enough data and enough facts to make sure that wasn't, I was going to come out on top. And it wasn't that I was trying to mislead someone or anything else, just laying out facts and data.
Okay. So I don't know if this question is like, okay, but you can tell me. Why, in your mind, as a person with lived experience identifying as trans and also like lived experience in social justice and policy, why is like transgender lives like the culture war right now? Why, even though like it is a small percentage of the population, it feels like it's the biggest cultural thing that politically we discuss in this country? Maybe guns are the second thing. I don't know. But what are your thoughts on that? Like, what's your hypothesis?
It's a wedge issue.
What do you mean?
And also part of why I chose, it was after the last election that I changed my designation to unaffiliated, because yes, one side of the aisle was definitely coming after trans people very hard. I also know that the other half of the aisle had ads bought, paid for, and produced that they chose not to run because they felt like it might damage their campaign.
Oh, that just gave me chills.
And so fuck all of them.
You're saying ads that were, pro-trans life, or ads that were in support of the queer community, and they didn't run them
They chose
because they wanted to win.
Because they were afraid that might set them back.
Why are so people scared of like transgender folks?
Let's be clear about that. People are scared of trans women.
People are scared of trans women. Say more, if
Trans
that's okay.
And folks that identify as genderqueer or agender or any of those that combine multiple or no identities when it comes to gender. The way that I describe this situation is the patriarchy is like the mafia. You can come in, but you can never leave.
Yeah.
And so trans men are welcomed in, and oftentimes in a really uncomfortable way, because guys rib each other all the time. That's how they show love to one another, is they make fun of each other, be like, oh, dude, you got a little dick. And it's more accepting that way. But the common trope is that we're pedophiles, all that sort of stuff, which my dad's a pedophile. I'm not. So that it's those things, people being afraid of, what if someone just dresses up as a woman so that they can get into a bathroom and do some harm? And I'm like, a pedophile or a sexual abuser is not going to dress up for the part. Sorry.
No, they're your teachers, your clergy, your neighbors.
No,
your
they don't have to dress up.
Right.
And the research supports this. Take it from a sex therapist. There's been so much research done on this. There is no link between transgender identity and pedophilia. None whatsoever. Zero.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, like, I would never, ever use a family restroom, for example, because I don't want to come across a mama bear who is thinking that I'm some sort of a threat. I would much rather be in the women's restroom. And if someone did pick up on the fact that I was trans and confronted me, I don't feel as threatened. Mm-hmm. I also have a lot of self-defense training and things like that. So that portion is empowering, but it's not as empowering for other folks. And especially, passing privilege is indeed a privilege. And it's not, I've enjoyed that in spaces and also not had that in spaces. And it doesn't feel great when you don't have that. You feel very insecure. So yeah.
For our listeners who don't know, can you explain passing privilege?
Yes. And this passing privilege kind of goes beyond if we're talking about gender identity or sexual orientation. Many people of color have passing privilege. And so what that kind of looks like is, even though I was assigned male at birth, I transitioned, no one really questions the fact that what they see is what they get. I am a woman and they don't see me as a trans woman. And so they don't see the trans part. And so that's where the privilege comes in, is that I'm just accepted as usually a cisgender woman and generally straight for the most part. Even when they see my wife and I together, they don't assume that we're together because neither of us presents butch or presents more masculinely. Where some communities of color come in, like I had a very good friend, he couldn't have been more white. He was half black.
Yeah.
And so he passed as a white person, even though he was 50% black. He looked like a leprechaun. It was great. But it was also really interesting to watch him put people in their place.
Yeah.
And be like, you can't say that. So that portion is awesome. If you have it, it's really not if you don't. But some of that's also mindset too. A friend, she and I look nearly identical. Like my wife has literally come up behind her and put her arms around her like hugging her from the back. And then she was like, what? And Rachel's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But she doesn't feel like she passes. I mean, we look that similarly, but some of that's just mindset. So
can you walk us through, my understanding from what I've talked about with you is that you weren't that interested in firearms until you help us with the language, came out as a transgender, came out as a woman,
came out as a gun owner.
Yeah. Like tell us about that piece.
So I'd had a small bit of gun experience prior to that. I'll tell you a funny story along with this. So I was a Boy Scout, actually an Eagle Scout.
Eagle Scout. Look at you. But my mom was my sister's troop leader in Girl Scouts. And so I got drug along on all the Girl Scout trips and got involved in all the cookie drives. And so they actually made me an honorary Girl Scout. Like I had a sash at one point. I don't know where that went. Kind of wish I had it back. But when I came out to my mom, I was like, Mom, you know, this is your fault, right? Because you had me in Boy Scouts and in Girl Scouts. And she was like, what? And I'm like, Jesus Christ, Mom, no, it's not how it works. But I had some experience, like 22 rifles, like small caliber stuff in scouting. And then it wasn't until, what was it, about 10 years ago, when it was looking a lot more like Trump might get the nod for the candidacy on the Republican side, even before everything was settled as far as who was running. And I just kind of knew the general type of folks that he was bringing out of the woodwork. And of course, for queer people, obviously, the Obama era was, a breath of fresh air. Even part of the Biden administration was the same. But I saw that writing on the wall the first time, and I was like, I'm not going to stop holding my wife's hand walking down the street. And I'm not going to let somebody, come in and cause harm to us just because of who we are. And so from there, I was like, I'm going to get a pistol and I'm going to train with it and I'm going to get my concealed carry and I'm going to make sure that we're protected. So it's Trump's fault that I'm involved in this. And then it just happened really kind of rapidly within like a year and a half. I had range officers at ranges that I was shooting at, and they're like, you're really pretty good at this. Have you ever thought about competing? And I'm like, competing in what? Like, I had no idea that there was even competitions that you could compete in with firearms other than like Olympic shooting or whatever. And so I was just like, so I YouTubed whatever they told me. And I looked that up and I was like, that seems like fun. So I signed up for a match, and the first time it's a disaster because you don't know what you're doing and you don't know the rules and everything else. And then did those competitions for about a year. And then one of the guys that I was shooting with was like, I think you'd really like 3-gun because I don't sit still very well. I went home and looked it up and watched a couple of YouTube videos, and I was like, that. I didn't personally own a shotgun. I had bought my wife a shotgun because she liked shooting trap and clays when she was younger. So it's in 3-gun, it's rifle, pistol, and shotgun. Shotgun's 12 gauge, pistol's 9mm, and the other one's an AR-15. Super scary, right? It's so not, even though everyone likes to think they are. The function of a pistol is the same as the function of an AR-15. When you pull the trigger once, it goes bang once. Then you got to pull the trigger again. Why do we all think that you can just pull the trigger and why are we confused about that?
Because Hollywood. So semi-automatic weapons are one trigger, one bang. If it's a bolt action where you have to literally run the bolt, that's a single action. An older school revolver where you have to cock the hammer back first and then shoot it, that's a single action. Full auto is where you pull the trigger and it just keeps spraying until it's done.
And those are illegal.
Those are illegal unless you have there's a ridiculous process to go through to be able to own those firearms. And it costs a ton of money. And you're regulated every single year. So very few people own those firearms. And it's usually shops that rent them out and things like that. And not rent, like you're not going to take it home like a U-Haul. Like you're going to be in the controlled environment somewhere because you can't actually have possession of it unless you have those licenses.
I feel like all this information will be totally brand new to most of our listeners.
I didn't know that.
Maybe some of your friends in West Virginia, is that an unfair assumption that there's more guns in West Virginia?
I don't think yes, for sure there are. But I never knew that actually automatic weapons were illegal, because it just goes to show how much shit we're fighting about that we don't even know what we're talking about. Right?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. And I love your focus, Courtney, on the research and the facts and the statistics. Okay. In a world where you didn't get into guns and didn't own guns, tell us how your life as a trans woman would be different, if at all.
I think the ways in which I see that it would be different is I think it really boils down to confidence. I move through the world with a much higher level of confidence because I know how to get out of a sticky situation. And that's not a gun first. And a lot of people would be like, oh, well, yeah, of course he's going to shoot first and ask questions later. No, my first tool is my mouth. My second tool is my feet. My third tool, if I have to, are my fists. But if I feel like I or someone else is going to lose their life, then I will use my pistol.
One of the guests that we've had on the Are We Happy Yet podcast, Jenny Level, she's been teaching self-defense classes, and she says something very similar where there's actually so much that goes into self-defense before you even use anything physical, right? And the confidence that you bring with knowing that you have some protection can make us all feel safer and all feel very different. I'm curious, do you feel like one of the misconceptions is that gun holders or gun carriers are just going to go straight to their weapons?
100%. Yeah. Almost everyone. If you carry a gun at all, first of all, most people are afraid of you. Yeah. Or afraid to even get close to you. I've even had family members go over to their house. They are comfortable with guns and whatever. And just because it's uncomfortable to have a pistol in your pants, take it out, put it on the counter. And they're like, I'm like, another really common misconception is there is one way for a gun to go off, and it's right here. I literally throw my guns with force into a bucket over and over again in competition. They never go off. I could probably provide you with 2 hours of video of just me chucking guns in buckets, and not once have they ever gone off.
So going back to the piece that got you interested in this, you said that you kind of saw the writing on the wall and the people that were going to come out of the woodworks with Trump becoming president. This may be an assumption, but I imagine in your 3 gun competitions, those are the exact people that perhaps were coming out of the woodworks. I mean, I'm just so fascinated by your ability to be in those community spaces. And I just want to know more about that piece. How do you stand confidently around people who, not you, but support politicians and policies that don't support you and people in your community? What's that like?
The best way I can say this is maybe in a question, how do you determine who good people are? Is it by their political affiliation?
But I feel like that's what we're doing these days.
Oh, the tribalism is real.
And so and that's the piece that I find so interesting and fascinating. It's on everything, podcasts, they support MAGA, don't listen, reviews on different types of therapy. It is very, very real. Can you just say more about that piece?
There are a lot of those assumptions, but those assumptions are on both sides. And
yes.
My wife and I have been guilty of that too. So this past weekend, I was down at the Whittington Center, which is the property itself is owned by the NRA. It's not run by the NRA. But the first time that Rachel and I went down there 6 or 7 years ago, we're literally rolling in. We're like, this is where we die. This is where we're going to die. That's 33,000 acres and they're going to bury us somewhere. But I'm like, but I got guns, so we won't go down without a fight. And no one gave a shit that we were perceived as queer. I wasn't perceived as trans. I've since found out that there was one individual that was telling many more people than I thought, that I'm trans, and no one's ever said anything. One guy came up and confronted me. He's like, "Hey, are you trans?" And I was like, "Huh? Why?" And he's like, "Because my kid's questioning." And so after they spend time with you and understand that you're a good person, I understand that they're good people. That gentleman gave me the warmest hug when I left yesterday. And it was last year that we had this conversation about his child. And so they're very welcoming. And all that matters to them, they're like, you're a part of our 3-gun family. If you need a kidney and I'm a match, you can have it. He said that to me point blank. We have these differences of political opinion and maybe a couple other things, but overall, we're all Americans and most of us have the same concerns. We have the concerns of putting food on our table. We have concerns of making sure that we can live in peaceful areas and not live in danger, making sure that we have stable work, all those types of things. And then it comes down to what you have in common with recreation or a shared hobby or music or whatever it might be. But being around them doesn't actually become it was hard at first. It took some courage at first, but it took more courage to fight my own assumptions around it. And then over time, they were like, oh, well, not only, and my wife comes to a lot of my matches, not only are they good people, they show up, one of the things that we say in 3-Gun is like, no one cares how good you can shoot as long as you help reset and tape, like all the holes that we put in the cardboard. Like as long as you're an expert resetter, no one cares about how you shoot, what you think, anything else. Wow. So it's like, as long as you're willing to participate and make the thing work, no one cares. And after a while, they started to get jealous because they were like, my wife doesn't come out and watch me compete. And one of my shooting friends, we actually had the same birthday. We were born 2 hours apart. He was just like, in kind of a moment of rare vulnerability for him because he's kind of a prick sometimes. And he would appreciate hearing that about, yes, you, Rich.
Hi, it's you. Hi. Thanks for listening. Rate and review us.
He was just like, it sucks. My wife has no idea that I'm really good at this. Wow. And he was really good. Like he was first almost all the time. And his wife she coaches competitive cheerleading and had never been to one of his matches. So it became really interesting to be like, your spouse is coming out, and they'd even ask Rachel, like, why are you out here? Like, she's like, well, for one, that's an 1.5-hour drive each way. So we get to spend 3 hours in the car together, chatting, just catching up, listening to something, a podcast or whatever. But she's like, it's also kind of fun. And I get to see my wife do something that makes her happy. So that's kind of the dynamic that's taken place over time. There's still people that, they keep their distance, but no one messes with me.
So do you think all the hoopla about, and I know this is a complex topic, but trans women in women's sports, is that going to affect you personally? Do you think it already has? Okay.
How?
In those spaces, and not necessarily in those physical spaces, but in those online spaces, people are, everyone's king shit behind their keyboard.
Yeah. That's so interesting about this. It's like you get to this fucking place 1.5 hours outside of a town with a bunch of guns and everyone's being nice, but behind their screens on Reddit, everyone's being a dick. It's weird.
It is because there's no consequences.
Yeah.
You can run your mouth, but if I'm in front of you and you run your mouth like that, you're probably going to
I'm going to beat your ass.
Yeah.
But you say it online and you feel like you're entitled to your opinion.
And I think even if you're not going to get your ass beat, just having a real person in front of you with feelings and an experience, like then that person's going to fire back. It's going to feel real. And like the online shit divorces us from real conversation, obviously. And so then we feel entitled and empowered and for all sorts of shit. I mean, it's wild what people will say online. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty nuts. And, there's been in some shooting sports areas that they're like, oh, we need to really focus on making sure that this is fair. We need to protect women. And I'm like, protect them from what exactly? Yeah. Because Jane, you have more testosterone flowing through your veins than I do because I don't have any way to make it or any way to convert it. I take estrogen and that's all. If this was 6 months after I started transition, yes, I have an advantage. But what is it? Every 7 years, every cell in your body regenerates. Yeah. Most injuries that I get these days are from doing things that I used to be able to do without thinking about it because I was strong enough to do it and it's no big deal. But I blew out my shoulder, literally reaching into the back of my truck and pulling my tool bag out, which I've done a million times. But 2-3 years on testosterone blockers and on estrogen, I did that and screwed up my shoulder. And if I thought that there was any way that I had a significant advantage or even a slight advantage over any woman in a sport, I wouldn't compete in it.
Yeah.
I've had this conversation with several different ladies that I shoot with online. We'll see what happens when I see them next. And they're like, well, you have an advantage. And I'm like, well, let me lay out some facts for you. And they're like, well, did you see this? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't give a shit what the Heritage Center has to say. No, I don't care what Fox News or Newsmax has to say, or NBC, CBS, anybody else. If it's a news channel, no. If it's a peer-reviewed study, let's talk about it.
Totally. Yeah.
And even though I'm a medical nothing, I have a published medical paper. And so people trying to argue this with me and be like, the structure of your muscle tissue is just inherently, I'm like, the fuck it is.
Right.
It is literally the endocrine system that does all of it. And that's why we see trans men in 6 to 9 months go from being very feminine to a full beard.
Yeah.
You know what it makes me think of? And obviously I just did it because I've been caught up in the left talking points of like ban automatic weapons. Well, they're already banned, right? So, I mean, it's a human thing, but the thing that it's really sitting in, and it's not going to be a brain buster, but it's like, makes me wonder how much of this fear is real and how much of it is perpetuated online, right? There seems to be such a disconnect between online spaces and in-person spaces. I think the hard part is, and I'll just speak in my therapist chair, like I want to support people, especially people who do identify as minorities or trans or their rights are on the line, right? But then like I'm hearing you talk about, and I know one person's experience isn't everyone's, like actually getting in that experience was more healing than harmful for you, right? At a certain point. So it's just hard to balance. Like you want to, as a therapist, want to support people and know that they are more in danger, more at risk, right? A Black man driving a car is much more at risk of death than I am if I get pulled over. And recognizing too, how much of it is the social media clip that gets thrown a million times versus what is real in real life and real research. It's just so fascinating, you know?
It's social media, but it's also just news. And I'm going to put that in quotes specifically because, no one practices a Walter Cronkite kind of news reporting anymore. No one comes back and says, oh yeah, that thing that we said yesterday, we screwed up. This is what's actually, once we got some more information. And I knew that when I was doing advocacy work, because I'd get phone calls from news agencies and they're like, oh my God, when Caitlyn Jenner came out, when I see Caitlyn Jenner, I'm going to punch her in the mouth.
Yeah.
More so, I don't care about anything she did. Just I was so damn tired of hearing her name and having to talk about it. I've joked around about that with people that know her, that like she'd probably think that was funny. But they would have the story that they wanted to tell.
Yeah.
And they needed it quickly and they wanted an answer right now. And I'd always be like, I don't have that answer. I can have it for you by tomorrow. And they're like, well, we're running the story at 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd be like, well, I don't have anything to tell you then. And then they'd go out and find somebody that was willing to run their mouth.
Yeah.
And so it's clickbait to sell ads. It's online. The algorithms pick it up. Trust me, my Instagram algorithm is so jacked up.
They don't know what to do with you.
Oh, I have everything from like lingerie and like girly ads to truck ads to gun ads to pee go hard pills, like you name it. They have that algorithm is so confused about who I am.
I love that.
Which is great.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
Switching gears here a little bit. Your wife said something very fascinating to me that I've thought about, that because you were socialized as a man, you had this experience of being treated like a man and having certain, what would you call them, privileges. And that when you became a woman, and you and Rachel, right deep in it, you're like, why are you doing that? And she was like, well, you guys sort of had this conversation about she's behaving as a woman's treated as a woman her whole life. Does that question make sense? And I would love to hear what you've seen, what you've observed.
The analogy that I use for this is it doesn't always sit well with people, and I still haven't quite figured it out. But I'm the frog that was tossed in the boiling pot. I wasn't boiled slowly. So I wasn't conditioned over a long period of time to, honey, you can't do that. Don't climb that tree. You're going to fall. You're going to hurt yourself. Versus Johnny does it. And it's like, Johnny, be careful. It's very different how we treat girls and boys. And I saw that very distinctly because the world saw me differently. I still have the same lived experience. That hasn't changed, but the world sees me very differently. And so I've gone to Home Depot and literally told people to get the fuck away from me. that work there. Because I've done jobs where I knew what a plumbing fitting was, and I know how to write out exactly what it is that I need.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, do you have this? And he's like, well, what are you trying to do? And I'm like, it's a completely out of the script type application. I just need to know if you have this hose. It should be here. Do you have it somewhere else? And he's like, I don't think you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't need your help anymore. And he's like, no, I need to understand what it is that you're trying to do. And I was like, no, you don't. Get the fuck away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And then a manager walked over because somebody went and got the manager because I had to tell him to get the fuck away from me 3 times.
Wow.
And then finally the manager looked it up. Like I had it on, even looked it up on Home Depot's little app. I was like, scan that. Do you have that? That's all I need to know. Do you have that hose? Yes or no? And he's like, well, it should go here, but it looks like we're out of stock. And I was like, sweet. That's all I needed to know. And so there's instances like that, but it's also, I see my friends that are cisgender that are in usually heterosexual relationships, and they're like, oh, my husband's so frustrating, or why the hell does my wife do this? I end up being a marriage counselor half the time, which I don't want to be.
Yeah, ask Hannah.
But it's a lot of it for men comes down to testosterone. That's the reason they do a lot of the dumb shit that they do. It's not because they're men. It's because of testosterone. I've watched it happen. I've watched very normally socialized trans guys get on testosterone, and like 3 months later, they're assholes. Not all trans guys are assholes. But I've seen that happen. And so it is very different. And, you know, my neighbor's an example of this. He's like, I'll do anything for him. And he's like, don't hurt yourself. And I'm like, Rich, I do this stuff, and that's how I stay strong. I don't go to the gym and work out. Like, I lift heavy things on purpose so that I can always lift heavy things. So he's always compensating for that. Like, I'll remove the snow because he's 80 years old. And he's like, don't hurt yourself. I'm like, it's a snowblower. I just have to walk behind it.
Yeah.
We're good.
So people assume you're weaker. People assume you don't know what you're doing.
Dumb. Don't know shit.
Which can be real fun.
I like that attitude.
Because people just can bury themselves, and I'll just let them.
Yeah.
I'll just be like, just keep running your mouth, because then I'm going to open mine and you're going to look real stupid. Mm-hmm. So it's those types of things. I go to Ace Hardware most of the time. And the newer people, they're like, can we help you find anything? And then somebody will usually yell like, nope, she knows where more stuff is than you do, because I go in there several times a week because I'm working on something. So
yeah, it's that identity piece again. They can't picture a woman knowing an Ace Hardware so well.
Okay, I have a very specific question now. My turn. Okay. I really want your thoughts on like the gun control narrative and what you think culturally we're doing right, if anything, culturally what we're doing wrong. What's your take?
The single biggest thing that we're screwing up right now is moving on any sort of policy, whether it's towards guns or away from guns, without understanding the root cause of gun violence. We don't understand why specifically schools are being shot up. We haven't done that research. We don't know why that is. So if we don't know why that is, we can't combat it. And there's also not 100%, but overarchingly, there are a certain kind of populace of people that commit these crimes. Why? Why do they commit those crimes? What led them to that point? Is it video games? I doubt it. Does that contribute? Does that give them knowledge about some firearms? Maybe, but not really. It certainly doesn't help you with what we call manual of arms, which is handling the gun, knowing how to reload and do all that. That doesn't really help because you just reload and you click a button. We haven't done that work as a nation. We don't know why people shoot people all the time. We don't know where that filter leaves the human brain, that doing this thing and pulling this trigger is going to end someone's life, literally, and then end your own because you're going to jail.
Sounds like the classic American tale. We don't look for the why, and we just try to fix the problem by putting a Band-Aid on it. And then everyone fights and nothing gets done. And maybe we could use some curiosity and exploration into what's really going on here as a culture.
And absolutely. And with some of the stuff that went on here in Colorado, in this last legislative session, it makes me very nervous because since Trump got back in office, I've probably gotten 5 to 6 messages a week on from people that are wanting to buy a gun to protect themselves. And they're not right wing.
And so when you're saying the legislature that passed, what are you referring to, just so people know?
Currently, well, as of August 1st, 2026, we will have in Colorado the most restrictive gun laws in the country. And it actually breaks both the Colorado Constitution and the U.S. Constitution. It has gone above and beyond, way too far. It basically bans every semi-automatic weapon, which is every concealed carry weapon, any AR-15, which people call assault weapons. It's not really true.
So Courtney, like the firearms you would use to protect yourself and your family would be illegal.
And what does that mean? Like the ones you have, you can keep, or you're supposed to hand them over?
If
or
you have them currently, you can keep them.
Okay.
But if you want to buy one in the future, you have to go through a class, which you have to pay for. Then you have to do practical, which you have to pay for. Then you have to go to the sheriff's office. And if they have any problem with you getting a gun, for whatever reason, there's no guardrails there. They didn't guardrail that in. So there's no anti-discrimination in that.
Did we learn anything from the war on drugs, people? Like, what do we think's going to happen here?
And it's, even I can understand the mentality around magazine capacity bans. I understand that will, in certain situations, that's going to potentially help save lives. The fact of the matter is those magazines are out there. You can drive one state over and pick those magazines up. And those laws actually make people like me that know how to use guns to protect themselves more at risk, because I don't have the same capacity magazine that the criminal is going to use, that he doesn't give a shit about the laws clearly because he's trying to break into my house.
God. I mean, it seems like probably one of the, I think I've even heard this before, like, well, people who want to protect their gun rights care more about their guns than they care about kids. And I know you, and I know that that's obviously not in line at all. You're not like, I don't care about children's lives and I don't care about safety.
I live down the street from a school. I've tried to figure out ways that I could talk to the city and be like, I'm probably the one you want to go in there. Even if it kills me. Like, I got a better chance of taking this individual out than most.
Yeah.
Plus there's a fun fact about women with firearms, and this is well documented, that a perpetrator, it takes them 15 seconds to realize that a woman's a threat.
That's a good advantage.
That just gave me chills.
Same.
So if I'm shooting like a bay stage, something that's not open terrain, that's half a stage. Like, I've already reloaded twice.
That is fascinating.
I love what you said, Courtney, so much. Like, instead of just making a policy, why don't we try to understand like what's going on to drive this, right? It doesn't happen in other countries. It hasn't happened at this rate in history. So that isn't just solely a fucking gun issue. There's a cultural piece, right? And so, of course, I'm obsessed with this conversation, Courtney. I think you just are so amazing and break down so many barriers. And I don't even know how to say, like, I think I'm in awe of you and how cool you are. I'm definitely scared of you and don't want you to fucking beat my ass.
Don't be scared of me.
You just got to get a couple fashions in her, and then it's, then it's just great.
Darren wasn't the one that was mansplaining to you in the Home Depot, or else we would have never met you.
It's so true. I'm glad he was like appropriate and kind. He had told me, he's like, oh, there's this woman in the shooting and blah, blah, blah. She's so cool. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, he's always telling me about whatever shit he's following on the internet.
And also good on you for not falling into that trope of like, my man's talking to another woman.
Oh yeah.
She like loves it. She's like, oh, Darren's getting it
totally.
on.
You come on over and see what's up. Yeah. Courtney, I second everything that Hannah said. Thank you so much for being on here and helping us understand things and chatting with us.
Courtney, what about like any like books or podcasts or things that are more nuanced flavor, like that you're talking about, just resources about this type of stuff that's real and not sensational?
Nuance is something I think we've lost in our country.
You're like, no, bitch, it doesn't exist. Yes, I agree.
Unfortunately, true. Like I don't have any nuanced resources.
You are the nuanced resource.
Yeah. At CourtneyGray.com is
I have my ass kicked so many
those.
times about so many different topics that I don't know anymore because it's all so sensationalized.
Real conversations, perhaps.
Face-to-face conversations, finding someone that you know, and if you think you don't know a trans person and you know more than 100 people, you know a trans person.
We're finally actually going to wrap up. Thank you so much.
My
Such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
You've been listening to Are We Happy Yet? A Green Roof Studios production.
This episode was recorded and produced by Hannah Buzzo and Jane Thatcher Hahn.
If you liked what you heard, rate, review, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Every review on Apple or Spotify helps us grow and redefine what it means to be well in an unwell world.
Thanks for listening. Try to stay happy out there.